Okay, so a few more people have joined.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell me how many people are here. When do you want me to start, or shall we wait a little bit longer?
I think we can start and they will come in after this. Some of them will
Okay.
come in after this. Yeah. It's okay. I have record this. So I will make sure they will watch all over again.
I'm sure everybody is watching it. We were Nusa and I were talking about wondering how many people did not watch the video. Therefore, they do not want me to ask them about the video. This is your opportunity to tell me that you're not prepared and you didn't. It's okay if you didn't have time. You might have other issues that you had work life balance issues. Did anyone not watch the video? That therefore I will not call on you.
I watched it halfway.
You watched halfway.
Yeah.
Halfway.
Me too, Prof.
Halfway, perfect. Who else watched it halfway?
It's me.
Yeah, no, there's a bunch of other people nodding their heads and yes. So
Me
how
too,
many
Prof.
people?
Me too.
Me too.
Me too. Okay, perfect. How many
Okay.
people
It's
watched
me.
it a quarter of the way, or 10% of the way?
I'm watching, but Prof, forgot already.
What? Perfect. Anybody else that didn't watch any of it? Is anyone now that we know that most people only watched a little bit of it? Did anyone not? So whoever didn't speak, we won't call on you. The assumption is that you didn't have the time to watch it all.
I was Prof. I watched it like 80%, maybe 70% of it.
70%. Okay, how come you didn't finish?
Come again?
Why didn't you finish? You got 80% of the way there.
Yeah, but I didn't get enough time to finish it, so I just picked some
Okay.
important points in that. So that's how I finished it 70% of it, not the 100% fully.
Okay, so we're going to start with you. Because I don't think...
Yes, Prof.
Yes? Nurul?
Sorry, Prof. I just watch it for not half video that I already watch it, just maybe around 30% only. Sorry, Prof.
Yeah, you're at the 30%. That's okay. So did
Maybe
anyone
Prof can
watch-
ask Dr. Satishwaran.
No, I think we should start with Alpha. I'm okay with that, Prof.
No, Prof. I think we should start with Satishwaran because he's one of our presenter today. He represents us.
Oh, he represents your department,
Nah.
does he?
Yes. He's gonna representing us.
No. I think that's the wrong
Excellent.
information, I guess.
So when you combine his total and your total, you watched 100% of it. Right?
I think maybe if we combine all of us, I think it will be more than 100%, 100% maybe. So you should
Great.
ask every one of us.
Satish
Right,
and
thanks.
100% already, Prof. No problem.
No, but we can start with Alpha. We can
Prof,
start with Alpha.
Prof,
we as well.
Prof, I think Dr. Aziz already watched everything. He already
Yeah,
transcribed
I think
everything,
all
and
the
I
groups,
do
I
very
agree,
sure
all the
that
people in
that
this
he
group
can
I agree
answer
that we
it
can
very
start with
correctly.
Alpha. So let's start with her.
Excellent. Okay, so we know everyone's jumping on your bandwagon, right? You watched most of it, and they're like, I want to be part of your team. Okay, so what we're looking at is as you look at that video or that part of the video, how does that differentiate those student presentations, or that's the class? I mean, what you saw is really the class. Every week we do exactly activities like that. So how does that differ from what you guys are normally doing for entrepreneurship education? So that's sort of the first topic. And we'll just go around the room, and I'm going to start with Binti. Pound Alifa Binti.
Prof, Alifa
Yes.
is our Alifa is not the participant. She's our officer.
Oh, she's the
Yes,
officer.
Yeah.
senior
You didn't watch
senior
the
registrar.
video?
Yeah, sorry.
You
I'm
didn't watch the video.
I'm sorry. I will
that's
follow
okay.
and hear.
No worries. So that puts it on somebody else. Nusa, do you want to lead?
Nice to
Compare
meet you,
contrast.
brother.
Oh yes, nice to meet you as well. So what do you do? What do you, if you're just watching, what's your role?
Talk about the financial and administrative part. I will arrange once you come to Malaysia.
Oh, okay, fantastic, perfect. So you're the most important person. You'll make sure my trip to Malaysia is fantastic.
Yeah, she's the most important person because she will be liaise with all the financial part.
Okay. Oh, okay. We need to
Yeah,
put the
she-
K game on here. Okay, mode Ikhwan bin Aziz.
Bro.
Prof.
I know I
Yeah.
pronounced it correctly. Okay, so when you think of that video, the little bit, the part that you watched,
Yeah, bro.
now if you'd watched 80% of it, you'd know that it was all the same.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm still not giving you an excuse for not watching it. I'm not giving you a pass for it, but the point is that is the format of a problem-based class. So how does that differ than with what you're currently doing, or how you currently teach entrepreneurship, or how you currently envision entrepreneurship education?
Bro, because what have I watched from the video, I saw that most of the students they have shared their problem, and then they discuss what their core problem, and then they find it their own self with the solution, and then like example like the Chantel, they have a marketing issue, and then they got problem with the poor engagement, and then content problem. Then they do some innovation, exploitation, and networking. Then they found some result from that action lah. So that's why I'm sure that most of the students they are share, and then they have give a good feedback about they give a good feedback how they are to solve the problem, innovate own business. Like example, like the Paul, I think Paul is quite interesting because his company involved in I think technology, like he worked like Microsoft system and so on, and then they got some different idea and how they are convert from the difficulty to make it simple. So I think this is quite very critical action they took in order to make their company most run smoothly lah. So that's what I have understand. This is a good case study, and then critical questions that they have around there.
Okay, so what we have is sort of the elements where the individual develops a solution. There's an element of innovation. There's an element of exploration, and then there's an element of action where they're actually implementing it, and then there's some result. Did you see the result of the guy who made the $50,000?
50,000, not really. What I saw that is like I think the Nora Shapika that problem, which is 50%, they can improve how that's one.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Let's. How on earth would I pronounce that? Yusirandini.
Yusrina.
Yusrina.
Yusrina. That doesn't sound like Yusrina at all.
Yeah, her name is Yusrina.
Oh no, it wasn't you. But go ahead. You wait a second. Are you on twice? You're on twice, or is it the same? Or is it two different people with the same name?
Yes, because I have problem with my laptop.
Perfect. Yusrina, what do you think about what Mo had said? Mo did.
Okay. I have watched half of the video.
Yes.
And then what I want to say. Okay, it is about case study. Okay. Most of them presented a weak problem, and they are trying to solve it using systemic thinking, and using your DYME model. Okay. I can summarize that most of them use KSA, knowledge, skill, and abilities, to solve the problem.
So they most of them use their personal knowledge skills to solve the problem.
Mm-mm.
Perfect. So when you say case study, what do you mean?
Again?
When you say case study, what do you mean? When you say case study, what do you mean?
Okay, for example, Paul. I think
Yes,
Paul.
Paul.
Okay. He worked in a Microsoft company.
Yeah.
Then he has a problem with using a business intelligence, I think.
Uh-huh.
Then he want to solve it using KSA. He analyze all the KSA.
Okay. Perfect. So when you say case study, you mean that they're applying it to solve a real problem for a real company?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So I just want to make sure I understand. So there's a big focus on, why is there a big focus on their KSA? Anis, Amira, Binti, Rabham? Oh, Saswaran? So why is there a big focus on your KSAs? Why is that the focus of this problem-based class?
Prof, can I
You can answer that.
Prof?
Yes, go ahead. Sasui
Yeah.
Swaran?
Yeah, I think because, yeah, Sati, just call me Sati. Sati, just call me Sati, Prof.
Yeah. So why is the
Okay.
focus on
So
KSA?
I think maybe yeah, the main reason why, like I can see that in this Harvard, they focus on, because they want to increase students' analytical skills, to solve a real life scenario.
I'm gonna stop you right there. What I asked was slightly different. Why is there a focus on an individual's knowledge, skills, and ability? Why are we focusing on an individual's knowledge, skills, and ability? Yes, Pon?
Individual knowledge and
Yeah, because that's what Yuri said last time. She said everyone's individual KSAs, which is your knowledge, skills, and ability. She gave the example of Paul, who had these knowledge, skills, and ability to solve this problem for Microsoft.
Can I say something about it, Prof?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, but I think that one, because in order to move the situation, right, knowledge, skill, ability is required, because when you do not have a skill, of course, you cannot move around in order to solve that kind of case. But in the way of that, I think in order to shift skill and knowledge, because sometimes we might be too much thing that thing can be even simple and can simplify it, but we make it complex. So I think
Okay.
why that's one part of it.
So there's two. You actually went somewhere else, which is kind of good as well. Pon, did you want to say something or not? So the idea is you talked about it's your knowledge, skills, and ability is your ability to make the change that you want to happen. And so every single one of those students that presented had to figure out what they could do to solve this problem. And so that's the important part of sort of a problem-based class, is that we have one student that works for Microsoft, one student who is a founder of a multi-million-dollar company, and then we also have a student who's unemployed, and we have a student who's an administrative assistant, right? And so each of them have different knowledge, skills, and ability, but they're also each solving different types of problems that are related to them, right? And so, and this is sort of why we sort of avoid the best practices, right? Because even though Paul and Genevieve and Mark and Sarah all use the same tools, right? Their knowledge, skill, and ability is contextually appropriate. So if you are an administrative assistant, she had knowledge of this problem that they're having with online teaching, right? And Paul has this problem that he realizes that there's new technology emerging, and if they don't incorporate it, they're going to lose tens of millions of dollars because the market's moving in a certain way. And so to solve problems, students first have to go look inwardly to the knowledge, skill, and ability. The second part that you said that was interesting that we're going to talk about was don't overcomplicate it. So why should we not overcomplicate it? When you saw those presentations, what's the value of not overcomplicating it? And I'm open to anybody that wants to participate, because I can't call on you because I will butcher your names, but if I don't hear from you, I will call on you. Enric Juan Modi Yusuf bin Wal. He's a participant? He's a professor?
Yes.
Excellent. So what's the answer to that question? I'll give him a second. Maybe there's a technical issue. Who has it? Is there more people on the other screen? How about Anis Amira Binti? The question becomes, why do we focus on something simple? These are complex problems. $1-million businesses, or how to get a job, are complex issues. So why do we focus on something simple, something small? Anis, go ahead.
Yes, because if we put it in a small scale, or we compartmentalize the problem into a small scale, then it is more easy for us to understand the problem and to solve it.
Perfect. Why is it more easy? Why is it more easy to understand the problem?
Because because we can, if we looking at the small scales, then we can solve it at it's like how can I give for example, if a student, if we know that the student, they learn, because okay, we can compartmentalize the student. Which one is understand the learning through problem solving, which one is understand the learning through experience, and then which one understand the learnings through case study, for example. So we can solve their problem based on their own issues.
Okay, so I'm going to just stay with the first part of what you had said, is that when you compartmentalize it, it becomes easier to solve.
Yeah.
And so why, I'm going to ask, somebody else can chime in. Pon, why is it easier to solve if you break it down and compartmentalize it?
Because it's not complex anymore.
Perfect. So you've taken something very complex, like how do I make that $1 million sale? Or how do I keep my company alive with this changing technology? Or how do I'll just use the other extreme. How do I make the, which Chantel was talking about, how do I make the online learning experience for Harvard executive education more interactive? Or how do I get a job? All of them are complex issues.
Yeah.
And you break it down into sort of this granular that it's easier to sort of figure out a solution to at least that part of it.
Yeah.
And then the second part that happens is that often is that you make mistakes. We're full of assumptions, especially in entrepreneurship, but everywhere, but we're focused on entrepreneurship. There's an awful lot of assumptions. Everybody's going to like my product. I'm going to be a success. And then we have assumptions of what people want and don't want. And so what we're doing is we're breaking it down into this concept called sort of affordable loss. So you take a complex issue like starting a business or solving this problem, and what can you develop and test in a week or 2 weeks? That becomes that critical time frame of what you're looking for. And therefore, it's not a big risk to the student, right? Or it's not a big risk. So the video that you saw, a lot of them are working executives. I've had a CFO of Fortune 500 company apply the tool. And so you have to make it small enough so that they are willing to take the risk and leap into the unknown, because they don't know. When they started using that tool, they did not know if it was going to work or not. And so you have to give them confidence by making it a small step. If it's start a $1 million business or change your business, like Paul, change your business completely, there's going to be a lot of resistance. His solution was, for our next customer, we'll include these apps, these tools into it to see if they want them, right? And so it was a small change in a multi-million-dollar business. If you looked at Chantel's video, what they were finding was they had only 50% enrollment because people like going to Harvard and doing the in-person executive education. And so what they were finding is that people weren't interacting at all on this online platform. And so what she decided, this was halfway through the semester. So she's taking my class while she's managing somebody else's class. And so it's kind of cool, right? That's kind of cool. And she's like, my other class isn't working very well. And so what we're going to introduce is these little voluntary after-hour meet and greet to get people to meet each other and to collaborate a little bit more. And the first time they did, I think they got 15 people to sign up. Both of them didn't know if it was going to work, but both of them tested it, and there was some level of positive response. But the assumption is that chances are we don't know if it's going to work, and therefore make it as small as possible. A, because it's really complex. B, because we don't want to spend a lot of time and effort, or we don't want the student to spend a lot of time and effort going in one way when you don't know if it's going to work or not. Excellent. Any other thoughts about the video? What came out as you saw the student presentations, and how you think about it as a lens through entrepreneurship education? What was different? What did you like? What did you not like? What do you want to know more about? Aziz, I know you can have a question.
Prof, actually, I want to ask about the thinking after artifacts. What does it mean by thinking artifacts?
Explain a little bit more. Thinking artifacts?
Because this one is coming from the Sarah Coffee, I think. Sarah Coffee Shop, which is she's using the branching scenario to find the issue. And then I think because what I understand that because some of the conversation said by using thing artifact. So that's why I'm asking what does it mean by thing artifact?
Okay, so what I mean by artifacts is that what the students have to do is show me what they've done. And so an artifact is a humanly created object that we put value to. And so basically she was showing us the artifacts of what she created. And what it does is it helps contextualize the story. It helps everybody else in the classroom understand what's happening. And it also helps the participants sort of look at what's happening. And so some of the other classes further on, we really focus on these artifacts, right? And so, yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, because I think it's same like we jot down the chronology of the cases, something like that, bro.
It's jot down the important things that you created in the case. Okay. So the chronology is important, but not as important as the key points of what was created. Right? So it can be chronological order, but focus on those key things that were created.
Okay. Okay, bro.
Yep.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah, perfect. Who haven't I picked on, Maine?
Satish.
Satish?
Dr. John, can I ask question?
Yes.
Yeah, because when I watch the video, I can see that most of the students, they are entrepreneurs or they have experience working, working experience, most of them.
Yes.
So they I think they understand their problem and they know their stuff very well. So for most of us here, most of the participants here, we teach students which are 19 years old or early 20 years old. So most of the students might not know what's their problem, what's really important for them, what's the meaning, like what's meaningful for them. So as an educator, how we can facilitate students to know their patient first, know what's meaningful for them, and then from there we facilitate them to solve problems that's meaningful for them.
Perfect. Excellent question. And what I'm going to do is I did show you the Harvard class, which is a master's level class, and that's completely accurate. In that it's not representative of your students. But what I wanted you to see is how people are applying the tool. And in today's presentation, I have two examples of undergraduate students. So I'm going to switch to the presentation right now. Allow, I'm going to minimize this. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's coming up.
You have the full screen, right?
No, it's not the full screen. Not on mine. I can still see everybody at the bottom.
So just let me know if you can see the full screen. Is that the full screen or is that the split screen?
It's got the one slide and then all the rest of your slides are below it.
Yeah, we're good now, right?
It can work. If you can make it bigger, that'd be great.
Oh, you can't see it? Shoot.
Well, we can see it, but it's in its smaller version.
I'm on full screen.
Okay. That little presentation view, bottom icon on the right, bottom right. The bottom right of that window you're in. There's
right here?
Keep going to the left a little, past the sliding scale, but stay on the bottom right.
This one.
There you go. We're there. Oh, I guess this is as good as it gets. Yeah, same thing.
I'll minimize this. Okay. So we went through the DYME model, which is this 10-step process where the first 5 steps are sort of the innovative part where you're developing something. And then the second 5 steps are what we're calling the commercialization process of developing an idea. And we talked a little bit about the thoughts on the video and sort of what was occurring in the class. And the key points were individual student agency, to innovate, to explore, to build knowledge, and to have some sort of result, with a focus on with this action learning. So it's not case studies, it's not reading, it's really just focused on learning by doing. And because of this individual agency, it requires student agency. So they can't think about implementing the idea, they actually have to implement an idea. And so we talked about sort of the value of theory, which is important in accounting and finance and sociology, but entrepreneurship is different in that there's no predetermined outcomes. So the example is, no one knew they wanted everyone thought they wanted a faster horse, but in reality, we wanted an internal combustion engine. And nobody knew they wanted a smartphone until a smartphone was invented. And now no one can imagine living without their phone. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of this article that I wrote, which helps unpack the theory. And it's called Success Through Failure. And it's not that I want students to fail. It's that as you're learning about entrepreneurship, you need to actually develop and test your assumptions. And the process of actually developing and testing is embedded in that you're going to have missteps. And those missteps, in the US, we have no problem calling them failures, in the sense that, you had a great idea, but yet it didn't quite fit with the market. And so I've been teaching for about 10 years. And it took me a while to figure out what my mantra was. And it's really to help students make a living around their passion. And so when I start my semester, start my week, start my day, I reflect on why I'm there. And I'm there to help students make a living around their passion. And this is important. It took me, like I said, it took me a while, and I'll explain my journey in a bit. But it's focused on the student making a living around their passion. And it took me a long time to realize that's what I was doing. And so oftentimes the word passion is thrown around like entrepreneurship. It doesn't mean anything. And so, but it's focused on the individual spending time getting good to help other people. That's sort of the definition of what passion is. So there's a little bit of my background that you know about. And so let's go back here a bit. Let's go back here. So when I first started teaching, the story is I was hired, my doctorate is in adoption of innovations, really focused on international business. That is my interest. That is really what I spent my business career doing, was running an import-export business. And then I focused on sort of institutional theory. But when I started teaching, the university I got my initial teaching job got an endowment to start an entrepreneurship program. And so the dean looked at me and said, well, you had a business, why don't you take over this entrepreneurship program, develop the curriculum? And I truly thought that you couldn't teach entrepreneurship. If you'd asked me and talked to other entrepreneurs, we all think that we were born this way, in that we were entrepreneurs and, it's just who we are and how we were. But I said, you know what, if you want me to teach it, I'll teach it. I don't think people can learn to be entrepreneurs, but I'll teach it. And so typically what happened is a student would come into my class with an idea, an entrepreneurial idea. And I taught the typical methodology. First thing I had them do was do a business plan. And then we had them do a marketing plan. And then we did the business model canvas. And then we did the 4-action framework. And then I had them do 5-year pro forma financial statements. And this is sort of where it's all kind of ridiculous, but this is sort of one of the more ridiculous examples. Is I actually had a student from Harvard. Now, my apologies, but it was an engineering student who came in with an idea that he thought he was going to make $975,000 in profit in year one. And I said, well, if you really thought that, why are you here? Why didn't you drop out of school and pursue that idea? And the default was, well, I'm going to do it later. And we all know deep down, if we really thought there was a chance that we're going to make $1 million in our business, we'd all take a sabbatical for a semester. We'd do it over the summer. We'd do it over the weekends. We'd really implement it. And so what was happening is I realized that all these activities that I was having them do, at the end of the semester, students were less interested. I was putting a barrier, a gap, obstacles between the student and their entrepreneurial idea. And the critical moment, and initially my first couple of years teaching, I was like, well, they just aren't entrepreneurs. They give up too easily. They don't have resilience. And then what happened, the critical incident is one year I had a student, it wasn't this student, it was a young lady who actually wanted to start a business. She'd won a business plan competition. She'd got a little bit of seed funding, and she wanted to do something really basic. She was a communication student. So her goal was to start a small social media marketing company to help small businesses get a web presence through. And I was like, wow, this is really exciting. And I really wanted to help her get out there because I knew she was a senior. She was going to graduate very soon. And I wanted to give her the tools. And an interesting thing happened. The more I pushed her to go out there and test her assumptions, the less she was willing to do it. And unfortunately, my well-intentioned efforts to get her prepared for life after school sort of all fell apart. And I realized that, in fact, not only was, I realized that I was actually doing harm in the methodology that I was using to teach entrepreneurship. And that was a critical incident in my life. And when I realized that not only it's not that you can't teach entrepreneurship, is that the professor of entrepreneurship is doing harm to other students that want to learn about entrepreneurship. And that's what led me on this journey to discover sort of both how entrepreneurs learn, how I learned, reflect on how I learned on how to be an entrepreneur. So how entrepreneurs learn, reflect on how my personal journey to be an entrepreneur, and then also the research on entrepreneurial learning. And those three elements came together to form this problem-based class. And so just a little bit of background on today's students. They're slightly different. We called them free-range children before. We'd leave, you'd leave in the morning and you'd come home for supper maybe. And now parents are lawnmower parents. And we talked about this a little bit where parents will fight to make sure their kid doesn't get left out, will fight to make sure their kid gets an A. And the parents just knock down every obstacle in front of their kid. We used to be little rascals. Now every kid is an emperor. They can do no wrong. And also the other part is that there's such great inflation, and we talked about, you guys mentioned that there was great inflation in Malaysia as well. So in the US, an A stands for average. The average grade in business schools in the US is an A. And so the paradox for entrepreneurship is back in my era, entrepreneurs were the C students. And they were the C students because the A students were smart and would become doctors and lawyers. And I guess I could say professors too, doctors and lawyers. And below them were, the manual labor, the unskilled labor. And so the entrepreneur as a C student was getting a signal that they weren't really that smart, but they had to do something else. And that C gave them the signal that they needed to develop something on their own. And that signal doesn't exist anymore. And then ultimately, students have limited real life experience. And they have limited sort of sense of their place in the world. They want to change the world, but they can't make their bed in the morning, or they can't get their homework in on time. And so I love this picture. Now for kids will have birthdays and they become events at a venue. And I remember when I was 8 or 9, I forget, my parents forgot my birthday. And then after that, they realized that they had forgotten my birthday. And so a month later, my brother's birthday. And then what they did is had a double birthday for me and my brother. And then after that, my brother and I had the same birthday, right? And so this is sort of the difference of sort of where students used to be and students are now. They are the center of attention, very little life experiences. They want to change the world, but really have no understanding of how to even start. And so when you look at the research, the top 3 reasons people give for not being entrepreneurs are they have no money, they have no knowledge, and they have no time. And I sent you the video of that entrepreneur's dilemma that I outlined that. And the essence is the order is backwards. The key to building successful entrepreneurs is that there's no substitute for the time. You can't be an entrepreneur by abdication. You have to spend the time to build the knowledge of how your solution, your idea solves the problem. And once you've actually solved the problem, in other words, you start being successful, the money comes very easily. And it typically comes because you're doing so well that people are paying for the product or service, or you're doing so well that other people see your success and offer to join, offer to invest. But essentially, when you're teaching at both the master's level, like the video you saw, but also the undergraduate level, you have to avoid the money, right? Because, and I'll explain why. The focus is on you need to spend the time to build the knowledge and focus on those 2 elements. And the money is extrinsic to the passion of solving that problem. And so this is a little background on entrepreneurship in the US, and we could sort of think about entrepreneurship in Malaysia in that, you know, there's 29 million entrepreneurial ventures in the US. 81% of them are solo entrepreneurs. And so those would be people that might have a second job or might do this on the side, or people that are doing this but haven't grown it big enough to hire employees. When you're looking at revenue, 98% of them have less than $1 million in revenue. So again, pretty small. And so we avoid sort of the focus on the $1 billion idea because that's not where our entrepreneurs are. And then ultimately, part of why we don't want to look at the money is that only 1% of ventures get external funding. And so we want to focus on the other 99%. And how do they build their business? It's not with external funding. And so there's something sort of interesting happening in the US in that there's this steady decline of entrepreneurial activity. So fewer and fewer people are actually starting businesses in the US. At the same time, and you juxtaposition that against the fact that more and more people talk about wanting to become entrepreneurs. So 80% of freshmen in the US are thinking about being an entrepreneur, yet only 1% of them actually do. And so we're teaching entrepreneurship. There's a lot of entrepreneurship education in the US. And what we see in this chart here is the 10-year survival rate of a business starting from the 70s. So in the 1970s, a business that was started, 80% of it would fail within 5 years. And then as you move each year, you can see that the survivability of businesses hasn't changed, even though we're teaching a lot of entrepreneurship. And so what I do is this is not statistically valid, but I'm superimposing. These are the number of schools teaching entrepreneurship programs. So now in the US, there's 3,500 universities teaching entrepreneurship. There's over 50,000 courses of entrepreneurship. Millions of students every year take courses of entrepreneurship. And so the more we teach entrepreneurship, right, the more we teach entrepreneurship, the fewer people actually become entrepreneurs. So we're not facilitating the creation of new ventures. And there's fewer ventures, and we're also not changing the survivability. So there's a problem where our teaching entrepreneurship is discouraging people from being entrepreneurs, and the fewer ones that actually become entrepreneurs, we're not changing the likelihood of their success. And so that was sort of the big awakening moment for me. And so I looked at how we teach entrepreneurship. And there's three basic approaches: practice-based, theory-based, and problem-based. So practice-based focuses on the idea that entrepreneurs are creative, and therefore we develop courses like design thinking, ideation, and the activities are marshmallow towers. And the learning outcome, we hope that we create creativity, we increase creativity, and therefore somehow the entrepreneur, the person who wants to be an entrepreneur, then applies those creativity skills to a real problem and starts a real business. My challenge with sort of this practice-based approach is, as far as I know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there is no shortage of marshmallow towers in the world. And so the connection between this activity and a real problem in the world is virtually non-existent. I'm not saying it's not non-existent, but that connection is really lost because you've created this activity and then, but you really haven't learned how to solve a real problem. The most common approach to teach entrepreneurship is theory-based or process-based, in that entrepreneurs start new ventures. There's typically discrete steps, and therefore most courses in the US just follow this process. And course examples are new venture creation, entrepreneurial finance, entrepreneurial marketing, and the activities can be writing a business plan. It can be, a pitch competition. And the idea is that you're hoping to build business skills that then the entrepreneur can then use to actually start a business. And unfortunately, what the business plan does is, there's a famous saying that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, or from the business plan point of view, no business plan survives the first contact with the customer. And so if Porter's statement is no business plan survives the first contact with the customer, why are we having students write a 50, 100-page business plan if it's not going to survive the first contact with the customer? And then, typically when you write a business plan, the very first thing you have people do is write a mission and vision statement. And when you talk to actual entrepreneurs, I never wrote a mission statement until I had 8 stores and I walked in about 50 employees, and I walked into a store and I was talking to the one of the employees in the store, and I realized they had no idea why they were there. And so that is kind of resembles but we have them do it at the beginning. I did it after my business had grown and I had to give a meaning and a purpose to the employees that didn't know what the meaning and purpose was. And then the third approach is this problem-based approach, in which the understanding is that entrepreneurs solve problems, real market problems, and then students should learn to solve these problems. And the examples of courses are my launching a venture course. And the activities are these concrete experiences, and the learning outcome isn't a business plan or isn't necessarily a viable business, but it's the construction of entrepreneurial knowledge. And so as you're looking at definitions, within Harvard's definition is entrepreneurship is the identification of opportunities, pursuit, and exploitation independently of the directly controlled resources. I love the definition in that, you have the entrepreneur pursuing the idea, in other words, and then exploiting the ideas, in other words, trying to make it successful, and then independently of the directly controlled resources, focused on the fact that entrepreneurs function with resource constraints. Within the DYME model, you have your knowledge, skills, and ability, but there's also gaps that you need your network to help you with. You're exploiting the network. So it's also financial resources, but also human capital resources that they're lacking. If you have the money and you have the technical know-how, it switches from entrepreneurship to project management, because you can just allocate time, resources, and people to commit to developing that idea. Entrepreneurs function with resource constraint. The part I don't like about Harvard's definition, the part that I changed, is I don't like the word identification of opportunities. And that minimizes the agency of the entrepreneur. And so entrepreneurship is the development of ideas into opportunities. And with my improvement on Harvard's definition, the agency of the individual student is center, because ideas don't matter. Ideas matter, but they're a dime a dozen. Everybody else has ideas. Everybody has ideas. It's the process. And so it's the process of actually the hard work involved in developing those ideas. And within Harvard's original definition, it just thinks that it presents the idea opportunities that are just out there, and all you need to do is see them, and ignores the hard work that the entrepreneur has to do. And so when you're looking at the word entrepreneurship, it comes from the ancient French, inter or between. So between you and I, there's a space. And then the second part of entrepreneur is prende, which is Latin, the root word aprender, which is to learn. And so the entrepreneur learns to be in between, which I love this definition. So Harvard's definition and the ancient, the traditional definition really focus on what entrepreneurs do. They learn to be in between, and they lack the resources, and it involves hard work. And they learn to be in between this problem and a solution. And so the entrepreneur takes the initiative to resolve the problem and solve the problem for themselves, but also for other people, versus everybody else who either doesn't see it as a problem or sees it as a problem but can't be bothered. Hence, this is why ideas don't matter as much, because a lot of people see the same problem. Only the entrepreneur attempts to solve it. And so when you frame that within student learning, students develop solutions that solve real problems, not hypothetical. And then we talked about, when we saw the other video, we talked about the previous video, it has to be what we call granular. It has to be small enough that they can take the leap and they can try to solve it. And that's important because of who today's students are. Limited real world experience, high levels of narcissism, and it's fear of failure. They've never failed at anything in their life. And you're asking them to come up with a solution that develop an idea that they don't know it's going to work or not. And so the premise of this active classroom, and we didn't quite get to that part of the video. When you looked at the video, is entrepreneurs learn to become entrepreneurs by doing from others and by working together. And so Lisa in 2 weeks is going to really dive deeper into this on next week on entrepreneurial learning. But from the video, the entrepreneurs all did it. In other words, they actually took the action to resolve the problem. The second part in the video was the discussion students are having. So you're learning from others. Their students' feedback was helping others better understand a better way to move forward, but also how to solve the problem themselves. And then that gets you to the third one, by working together. So within the classroom, the video that you saw, students are working together to construct knowledge of how to solve the problem. And so as a result, your role switches. And this is the topic we're going to talk about in a deeper dive in 2 weeks. And so you're no longer the sage on the stage. You do not know the right answer. It's tough. You guys have your PhDs, your doctorates, your masters, your teachers. but it's tough not to know the right answer. You're no longer the sage on the stage. And why that is that we have no idea if the market's going to accept the student's product. And every student, based on their KSAs, their knowledge, skills, and ability, will take the product to a different place than you would have thought it would have gone. And so if you're no longer the sage on the stage, you are a facilitator. You help students build their entrepreneurial knowledge, skills, and ability. And so within the video, you saw me not answer any questions, or very few, and I would pivot questions to let other students develop the solution. And what it does is facilitation is there's no predetermined outcome. You sort of don't know where the class is going to go because you have to tweak the class based on what the student need is. If they struggled with pricing, then you need to focus your discussion on pricing. And the idea is that you let students talk about how they price their product. Traditionally, students will go with, I want to be the cheapest in the market. And you let them, you don't say, well, that's a bad idea. Being the cheapest in the market is a bad idea because you're not the sage on the stage. You want them to construct the knowledge. So later on in the semester, they realize that they're making $10, for example, and they are working 10 hours. And so they're only making $1 an hour. At that point, when they start thinking about the value of their time, at that point, you can have discussions related to how do you add value? How do you differentiate your product to make it more valuable? So in other words, you can make more money, charge a higher price. If you tell them that at the beginning and it doesn't work, it's your fault. If you let them go through the journey and you're facilitating it, construction of knowledge is much deeper learning. And then at times, students sort of need more help in specialized training. So their business is really going well, but there's specialized needs. And at that point, you become a coach and help them identify the specialized need that they have and help identify ways to fill that need or learn about that topic. And as a result, if the professor doesn't have the answer, the role of the students change. They're no longer passive learners who are just we use the word regurgitating. In other words, telling you back what you just told them or what the chapter said about entrepreneurship. And what you end up with is you're instilling in students this self-directed learning. And so with your role as a facilitator, they work on their own idea. And self-determined is they identify the gaps in knowledge and work to fill them. So this is that exploiting the networks part of it, where they have this idea and there's elements missing, and they have to determine what's missing, what to include, what to exclude. And they learn it through the cohort of the class and through their concrete experiences. But I'll sort of emphasize it again. Your role as a professor is not to tell them this is the right answer. And the reason is that chances are you're wrong. I'll just call you out on that. Chances are you're wrong. I've seen students with businesses who I was like, that is never going to work in my mind. I never said that. And find out years later that they're still doing it and making significant money out of it. And so when you're thinking about this entrepreneurial classroom, there's these principles called effectuation. And they're slightly different, I'm sure, in Malaysia, but the concepts are kind of the same. And these are the 6 elements of how entrepreneurs behave. So there's the bird in hand principle, pilot the plane, affordable loss, lemonade, crazy quilt, and iteration. And so within the active classroom, you're facilitating these behaviors. And so the bird in hand principle, the saying in the US is the bird in hand is worth 2 in the bush. And so the idea when you're facilitating the classroom is if a student is trying to do a certain business and their default is I can't because I don't have this and this, you say, well, what do you have and what can you do with what you have? So don't worry about what you don't have, because you have no way of overcoming that. We want you to build and work with what you have. And so this is the bird in hand principle of when you're facilitating. You're building that growth mindset in the student of, this is what I have, and I'll start with this. And what you have can also be your network and friends who volunteer their time and effort, right? But that is what you have. So it's not just physically what you have, but what you can acquire, what you can put together. The second one is pilot the plane. Many times students come into my office and I have this great idea, and I say, what have you done about it? Well, they're like, I have no time. And I call those entrepreneurs by abdication. They think the idea matters something. And so within pilot the plane is the students need to have that agency. The entrepreneur needs to lead their own learning journey. And so entrepreneurs aren't passive passengers in this course. They are leading the journey. And so how can they lead the journey, right? So how can you facilitate the discussions and all that so they can lead the journey? The affordable loss element is because you and I know that they're going to fail, and many of those ideas that they come into the classroom aren't that great or aren't that well thought out. And so this principle of affordable loss comes in, and I'll show you a video at the end where I have a student at the beginning of my class. I give everybody $1. So whatever that would be an equivalent of your currency, it's just a token amount. And the idea is that if it fails, it was my dollar, and so you haven't really lost anything. But the affordable loss concept is take these small bets and build on them. And it's also, if you fail fast. So you don't want somebody to spend all their money on their first idea, because chances are it's not going to work. So what's the least they can spend in time and effort to develop and test their idea? And that's the affordable loss concept. And I developed that in the video where I broke down the activities into small bets, and then you learn from those, the outcome of those, developing and testing those assumptions, and slowly over time you get a better solution. But the idea is, if this idea doesn't work, have I saved enough time and effort and money to keep the business going? This ties nicely into the next one, which is, if life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And so during the journey, this entrepreneur journey, there's lots of missteps and failures. And what successful entrepreneurs develop is this growth mindset and how to learn from these failures to build better ideas. How do you iterate? How do you pivot? And so as somebody talks about a failure, what did they learn? How can you do it differently next time? Are the key elements of this lemonade principle, right? And when you pair that with the affordable loss, they haven't spent a lot of time and effort. So it's not a lost cause. It becomes an opportunity to learn from this mistake and build something better. And so the next part is this crazy quilt. A quilt is, I think it's pretty much a North American invention where people with limited resources would patch together pieces of material to make a quilt or a bed cover. And so entrepreneurial process is what we call bricolage. And what that means is that the entrepreneur scavenges around and grabs what they can, parts, and misuses parts, and puts together a solution with what they have. And so the crazy quilt component is that everybody's patchwork is different because everybody's context is different, whether it's socioeconomic levels, whether it's levels of gender, whether it's previous experience, whether it's work experience, whether they're rural or urban. All those elements are part of who the person is, and those solutions emerge from sort of that ecosystem of what they are. And then the last one is this iteration. an iteration simply is repeating a process over and over with the goal of making small changes to slowly, eventually resolve the problem. And so that's the iterative process of entrepreneurship. It's a slow development process. And that's why I use the term granular. You want them to break it down into a small enough thing so they can test it, then they learn from it, and then they repeat it again. I'm going to end the slideshow, and then I'm going to open it up for questions, and then I'm going to go through the model of the actual class. Stop presenting. Okay, questions, comments on any questions on those concepts or terms? Rosalyn Wazi Binti. Rosie, can we call you Rosie? Rosaline Che. Am I muted? Can they not, people not hear me?
Rosli Zawati.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's who I want. What did you think of that? What are your thoughts as you saw that? While we're waiting for her to think, Noor Binti? Ray. Hi, Ray.
Yeah, Prof.
What do you think of that video? That part that I presented so far. What are your thoughts?
Okay, Prof. Actually, I want to ask about personal brand, Prof. Brand, how you brand and market yourself.
No.
Yeah.
How is brand and market the same?
Yeah, I want to ask about the personal brand. How the student can brand or market themselves. For example, because sometimes when we ask some questions or some opinion, they will feel shy and do not want to answer because they don't have the knowledge or abilities.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, so how they can know their key personal brands?
Okay.
Move on.
Perfect. I'm going to leave that because that's actually a really good question, and I cover that right now. Okay?
Prof.
So that's my next part. So you anticipated where I'm going, but I want to know if anybody has any questions on those 6 elements that I talked about, or sort of, your questions about the challenges students have, right, with fear of failure. And I'm going to look at that right now in the next section. Any questions or comments on what you saw so far?
Okay, Prof. I have one question. Okay, as an educator, we are not only teaching the students, but we are also helping the society in income generating activities.
Yes.
So my question is, how we can build entrepreneurial KSA among the society?
Just a quick question. Is my video moving now? Is it better? But you can hear me, right? Shoot, I don't know what happened. I just disconnected. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you, Prof.
But we cannot see you.
We cannot see you. Yeah, now we can see you.
We can see you now.
You know what happened? As I unshared the screen, it went on mute. The video turned off. I don't know why. Okay, so perfect. How do you build knowledge, skills, and ability? So based on the video, based on what I said right now, and if you saw some of those presentations, there's a student in there that because of this tool, they made $50,000 here. But based on the DYME model in my presentation, how do we build students, entrepreneurship students? Aziz? How do we build entrepreneurs?
Okay, based on what you said previously, in order to build the entrepreneurship, what the first thing first, of course, you need to start, right? Even though you said previously there is a three element that what you have mentioned by now, like people have no times, no knowledge, and what is another is
No money.
no money. So the first thing first, you have to focus on time. You have to spend the time and knowledge and skill, and then you have come with the money. So that's that.
Perfect. So excellent. So the way you develop entrepreneurs is you need to spend the time doing concrete entrepreneurship, right? So almost no entrepreneurs, their very first time they start a business, wrote a business plan. So why are we asking students to write a business plan when we know anybody that's read a business plan, when you read this business plan, you're like, this doesn't make any sense. But they filled in the boxes and they have all those elements, but they say they're going to make $100,000 year one, and then year two they're going to make 200,000, and then year three they're going to make 300,000, and you're like, but you have to give them an A. So we give them an A for something that is hypothetical, a theoretical construct, of the ideal world of entrepreneurship. And you remember from my presentation, I gave you all those images of the top 5 companies in the world, the top 10 companies in the world. None of them had a business plan when they started, right? And so we are, first of all, so when Aziz says start, it's start the action of actually developing a solution. And then the second part of it is be granular, because starting a business is scary, it's complex, and you don't want them to fail. So you have to get them to start something small. And so if the idea was, I want to start a restaurant, what can you do small to develop and test that assumption? Lisa? You need to unmute.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to the question to give some background, just a little bit of pedagogy here. So the question was, how do you build entrepreneurial KSAs? But I think you have to, yes, Dr. John was getting to it, and Dr. Aziz, but as a professor or a trainer of entrepreneurship, you have to stop and think, what is entrepreneurship? And so if you look at the literature, entrepreneurship is a practice. And if you look at the literature, you know that we know from the literature that entrepreneurs can teach themselves how to be entrepreneurs. So why do they need us in academia, right? So part of why they need us is to help build their KSAs, their knowledge, their skills, and abilities. Yes, people can be shy, they can be introverted, some people are extroverted. We get people and students from all different areas and different experiences. But we need to take it back to the point that entrepreneurs can learn on their own. And if you think of that, they're learning through action. And so when Professor John says you have to bring it back to the action, and Dr. Aziz says the concrete action, you have to stop and think what that concrete action can do for your student. And that's part of how the DYME model came to be. Yeah. So
the idea is that if there's this concrete action, and we're structuring it within a classroom setting, right? And so there's limitations of what students can do and can't do. But ultimately, at the end, a problem-based classroom, and I'll show you the research here in a minute, has significantly better outcomes than a process-based or practice-based. But before I get to that, I'm going to just share my screen again, and I'm going to just go through the sort of the methodology of the classroom, which then helps you understand how you actually develop entrepreneurs, which was the question, right? Let me do. Is it? There we go. Can you see that okay? Can you see that okay?
Yes, yes, we can.
All right. Okay. Okay. Perfect. And so within the classroom, the goal is point blank, and I'll just, the goal is point blank. We want to develop entrepreneurs that are going to start businesses, but not just start businesses that increase the likelihood of success, that then they can grow their business and employ people and drive economic development, period. That's the point of why universities are developing entrepreneurial programs. This is why governments are mandating universities develop entrepreneurship programs. This is why the Malay Bank funded this chair in entrepreneurship. And so those are all very large macro goals. And then what we need to do is take it down and take it simple. And what can we do in the classroom this week that will get us to where we want to be? And so I've developed this cycle called the virtuous cycle of entrepreneurship. And so every student, even the shy students, even the students that don't say much, even the students that don't like to talk, all have an idea, right? We know that 80% of students that take entrepreneurship courses want to start a business of some sort, and so I let students think about their idea for a week, but not more than 2 weeks, because we need them to do the action. So there's idea, action, outcome, reflection, and self-efficacy. This is the cycle that students go through each and every week in your class. And so the idea is just a conceptual framework. There's a problem with food in the university. There's a problem with getting students the right books. There's a problem, a whole myriad levels of problems. And we have to be small enough that the student can actually attempt to solve it. So we don't want to solve hunger in Malaysia. We just want to solve getting healthy food on campus, or getting whatever those students come up with a problem. It has to be their idea. It can't be your idea. And the reason is that we want that intrinsic motivation. We want them to pursue and work on solving that idea because they think it's important. And so at that level, the professor is really the facilitator. And so sometimes students will come up with decadent desserts as their idea. Sometimes they'll come up with healthy snacks. Those ideas are contradictory to each other. But as a professor, as a facilitator, you can help each of those students pursue those ideas. Students work 4 to 6 hours to develop that idea. And that's the action component of the model, right? So the students have to spend the time trying to develop that idea. Like I said, I'll give them a week to think about it. But after that, you're missing a lot of elements. You don't have this and you don't have that, and that can become a paralysis, what we call paralysis of analysis. They focus too much on what they don't have. Your role is to say, okay, this is your idea. This is as far as it's developed. You need to go test it. And so the other part is that you're separating. You want them to spend the time. And so we'll talk about this a little bit. Lisa will talk a lot more about this. You separate success or failure of the business with success or failure in the course. In other words, they pursue their ideas, and as long as they're actively trying to make it better, it doesn't matter if they make money or they make a lot of money or a little money. The profitability, which is that money component of it, doesn't determine the grade. And the reason is that we want students to pursue what they think is important, not pursue something that they think is easy to make money. The outcome. So students leave, like the video you saw, they go apply the tool, and what you saw was their presentation. And so they applied the tool, and some of them worked out well, some of it didn't. And so we have a class discussion. And so what you saw in the video was sort of a higher level kind of class discussion of the interactions of what we're trying to, how you're trying to facilitate the student learning. So it might have gone well one week, it might not have gone well. And the class as a whole discuss and decide and reflect on why it went well. And then what you end up doing is you have this reflection, which is week 3. There's a narrative, there's these different levels of prompts that you as a professor have them talk about. They don't know they're reflecting, they're just talking about what happened. But the prompts that you give ensure this sort of deeper reflection. And then ultimately, at the end of every presentation, you frame it back to them and say, okay, how can you do it better next time? Or how could somebody else do it better next time? Because you want to instill in them in this growth mindset of, okay, it might not have worked that well last time. I learned from my mistakes. I learned from other students who did things that might have been better or might have been worse. And therefore, I can then take this and iterate and try it again. And so at that point, they leave the classroom with some new ideas, new confidence, and this sort of belief that they can try to do it better. And so even the shy student has to participate because they have to come up with an idea. They have to take the action. They have to present the outcome of their action. And then we have to have a discussion about what happened. And then the shy student is like, what would you do next time? And they're like, well, I'll do this. And then off they go to do it again. And so part of it is that we're looking for low cost, no cost solutions to trying to get something done because we don't have a lot of money. And even if you have money, you don't want to spend it, right? In my experience, low cost, no cost is what you want. And so I'm just going to skip this for a second. So this is an actual student post of mine, of one of my businesses, one of my freshman businesses. The student posted this, and it was a picture, and it was seen by 33 people, and they came back to class, and they said, well, I did entrepreneurial marketing, and no one bought anything. And I was like, well, what, I don't know, you guys all have questions. You might even be asking, what is it? And why would I have any assumption that that would be for sale? Right? And so I don't show this prompt, but I'll show this prompt to you, right? And the idea is how do customers, so you know the theory in behind, but the theory is invisible to the students. And so the discussion becomes, how could you improve that? And you're not answering the question, you're asking other students to help build a better understanding of how to take a post like this and make it successful. And so, for example, when you're looking at reciprocity, let's go to here, is a common technique, and it could be something you could put on that post, something about free samples. If you want to convince someone to buy, you could make a post, I only baked 48 of them, which instills in the message that there's a scarcity component. If there was some text on there that said something about it being homemade, it would instill authority. You know, my mother's recipe. The consistency is calling all chocolate lovers. So if you love chocolate, you'll love my brownies. The commonality is what you have in common with the person. I love brownies, you love brownies. A message like that. And social proof is a message like, you know, I baked 48 of them, is scarcity, almost sold out, is sending the signal to the people that are watching it that other people, the social proof component, other people have bought it and they better buy it because everyone else is buying it. And so I use this as an example of how you can have the discussions. And then you're just writing down ideas that students are saying, and you're calling on that shy student, you're calling on the boisterous student, you're calling on the student that did really well, you're calling on the student that did really poorly. And as a group, this is that part about learning by working together. They help build this student's understanding of how to do it better next time. And so here's the post, and here is the student as they took that feedback and made it better. They added a tagline, holiday market extravaganza, gave a time and a place, and then there was come for the sale, stay for the protein. So it turns out those were protein brownies that people used when they exercise. You would have never gotten that from the first picture, but it only came through the discussion and implementing, sort of figuring out how to do it better. The students start at the left, right? And so we meet them where they are, not where we want them to be. A student will think that this is all they need to do to sell something. Throughout, like I said, the students start at the left, and it's not that it is very little effort, but it's also, they just don't know. And they don't know, it's shocking how little they know. And I'm even talking about my Harvard students, and my master's students and executives in companies, but freshmen, no concrete experiences, never did anything business-wise, never did anything. And so they just think they post it and magically their business succeeds. And throughout the semester, that student that started out with posting an image of a brownie with nothing, with no caption, went to sort of a better post here. And this one I love here, the image on the right. Later in the semester, she posted cookie brownies with a question mark, and it was a poll, yes or no. So 95% of the people said yes. The beauty of where she grew in her business is if you clicked yes on this link, it took you to an online order form. And those people ordered brownies. So this is where we want them to be, right? To me, this is a home run. This student now understands a lot about business, entrepreneurship, and really is connecting a lot of those dots. But you can't expect them to be here. You have to meet them where they are, which is a simple image, and they don't know what to do with it. And this was constructed throughout the semester. I did not tell them this is the answer. And so I was quite proud of myself. I did all this research. I developed this model, and then 4 years ago, I was invited to teach at Harvard, and I said, because they invited me because they liked what I was doing, and I said, well, I had this great model I've developed, and they said, oh yeah, no, we call it constructivism. This is how we at Harvard Extension School, not Harvard Business School, because Harvard Business School is designed to teach general managers. Harvard Extension School and the Harvard Teaching and Learning is focused on how do students actually construct knowledge. And so what happens is that this is when students come in is what they can do. They can bake the brownies, they can post a picture, and there's fear with what they can't or don't do. And so the role of constructivism of knowledge is move the students closer, lessen the gap so that the students take the leap into the unknown. There's still some fear, but you mitigate the fear. And the concept is called the zone of proximal knowledge. There's an element of what the students can do, and there's a part of the unknown, and entrepreneurship has to be a leap into the unknown. Because if you already know the result, it's not entrepreneurship. And if the students are doing something that they already know the result of, they're not growing and they're not learning. They're too focused on doing the minimal to get a good grade. Well, let me watch this. So I'm going to show you two little videos. Can you see the video or no? Can you see the video?
No, Prof.
No.
We can see. There it goes.
Yeah.
You can see it now?
Yeah.
Is there sound?
Yeah, yeah.
Is it on the big screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We can't hear anything.
The video is up here, but you can listen the sound.
You can't see the video?
We can see the video, but we can't hear anything.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let me try this again. I'm going to try it again. Can you see it now? Can you hear it now?
No, Prof.
You still can't see it, huh?
We can hear it. We just can't see it. I wonder if there's a setting to turn off your head. What you're on your actual computer. Change the device. Hmm.
Okay, I'll try this one. Can you hear this one? No?
No.
Shoot.
If you dialed in with your telephone, you could hold it up and we can hear it.
Okay. We'll go back to the. Am I still sharing or not?
Your face. Can you go to the three dots down beside present now?
Yeah.
And then you see audio as the first tab.
It says change layout, full screen, turn off captions, settings, phone.
Okay. So the three dots that are up and down.
Yeah, what I see is
Audio, video, general. At the top of those, a window pops open.
I'll just show you my entire screen here. So, oh, there it is right there, right?
There you go. Yep. And then audio or settings. I think it's under settings. There we go. Audio, video, general. Under audio, can you change your microphone or your speakers? Speakers. Change your speakers. Is it speakers or microphone? I forget. It might be microphone. Will it let you?
It won't let me.
Oh, nuts. It might be the application.
No. Okay. Anyways, okay. So what? I'll stop presenting. I can probably do it. Can you hear it now?
No, Prof.
Okay, you'll have to watch. I don't know why it's not letting me. I'm gonna stop present.
Oops.
Okay.
Okay.
You'll have to watch that video later. So those two videos. There's two videos. I'll send you the. We're back in. I'm not sharing anything, right, Maine? Okay. So those two videos that you're going to see after class sort of both explain the student's journey through the course. And they sort of outline kind of that weekly methodology of what we're trying to accomplish to get them to actually conduct the action. And sort of this is their end of semester final assignment. So can you just unmute your mic, Lisa, if you want to have something to say? Can you unmute? We can't hear you.
Are you saying your video's off, John? It's just your J. There's no picture of you.
What?
Yeah, it was weird. It was frozen on your face, and then you just now went to J, and it's staying there. Now there you're back. You're back.
Thank you. Just let me know if that happens. It seems to happen when I change screens. Okay, so I let's talk about that. It's unfortunately you can't see the video of the students, the freshman students, but I'll send you the link and you guys can watch it. But on that 5-step process, what are your thoughts? What did, you know, when you're thinking about that overarching goal of helping build entrepreneurs, do you think that's a good way to start, and why? Binti, Abdullah, I can see you want to say something. Pond, Fadi.
Hanim.
Yes, you.
Sorry, John. I'm just in because I have a lot of distraction before, so I'm just can't get. Yeah, just
You
join.
just arrived.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, who wants to jump in here? Ray?
Okay, John. Actually, this is about my friends asked you before. Previously, I think my friend asked you about social, I think. Did you notice any changes in skills or abilities for the student? For example, because you have 10 years, right? So 10 years, maybe you have the new skills. And then for nowadays, most of the entrepreneurship, they focus on the social skills or social elements, right? So how they can develop these social elements, skills? Because I know this is not the news, but I think now some news because social entrepreneurship, right? Before this, we just know about entrepreneurship, but when we add for the social, so maybe they have a new skills. For example, to enhance their social skills.
Okay.
For the business or any projects.
Okay, so I personally don't differentiate. You could put last names or titles to it: social entrepreneurship, corporate entrepreneurship, developing countries entrepreneurship, female entrepreneurship, engineering entrepreneurship. I don't mind. To me, those hyphenations, they don't bother me, but at the core, it's all entrepreneurship. And so if you, some of those presentations from the Harvard class, some students are doing social things. And some people are making lots of money in a business. And so the idea is that the tool helps people develop their idea, whether it's a social idea or whether it's a for-profit idea or whether it's a way to improve sort of education. And so you facilitate them in solving the problem that they want to solve. If it's a social problem, if it's a for-profit problem, I'm going to just show you the results, right? Because you talked about me doing it over 10 years, and I'm just going to go right to the results so you can see what the research shows of what's happening. Do you have the screen now?
Yes, John.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
I think can make
Okay.
it a little bigger. That'd be even better.
I'm trying, Mame.
Perfect.
Is that, let me see if this is better. Is that better or no, it's the same?
Better.
Okay. Is that the full screen or no?
No.
No, okay. Anyways, I'll just leave it for now. Okay, so why does it work better? So the reason it works better is this concept we call cognitive dissonance theory. And that simply means that it can't be about the money. And so Babson called, it can't be about the money. And this cognitive dissonance theory was, they had people do a meaningless task. And if it's about the money, which is extrinsic, they get demotivated because they're not making a lot of money. If we remove the money component of it, right, the student that only made a few dollars, they're doing it because it adds value. There's something valuable of what they're doing. And so therefore, this is sort of the cognitive dissonance theory. So we need to remove the money component of it. And the nice thing is I don't think you guys have money to give students anyways. And we don't want them to spend money. We want them to spend time. The second part, it works better is because they construct knowledge versus they learn by doing versus you, the professor, telling them. You focus on intrinsic motivation. So as they struggle, you are asking them, why did you think this problem was valuable? And that motivates them because they're trying to solve the problem. You're exposing them to subjective failure. And this means that you remove the grade from success or failure in the business. When I first started, I had students that, I never had a student lose money. I had students that were close sometimes. And then over the number of years, now, you know, nobody ever gets close to failing. So for the professors, it is a learning curve. And I'll get to that in a second, but I'm going to show you the research. And so what I noticed is that my students, after I switched, right? So I had that incident where I realized I was doing harm to the students. And I said, I need to switch. And I reflected and I said, you know what? I'm just going to throw out the textbook and we're going to do entrepreneurship. I didn't know the theoretical constructs of what we were doing. I just wanted them to practice being real entrepreneurs. And what I noticed was a change in my students. It went from, here's my business plan. It's going to make a lot of money, but I'm not going to implement it. To after the semester was over, students would come up to me and say, I still am working on my business. I need some more help. And that change signaled to me that something was happening. And then also the students at the end of the semester were much higher confidence, were able to explain their idea in a brief amount of time. So previously it would take someone would come to my office and talk for 45 minutes and I have no idea what their idea was. Now they could succinctly tell it. And so I started talking to my colleagues, and a psychology professor said, well, that's interesting. We can actually measure that. And I said, wow, okay, let's measure that. I said, I'm curious because part of the reason I was curious is I was looking for academic justification, research evidence to support what I was observing. And so we mapped out, we developed using the theory of planned behavior. We looked at these variables, and the way the variables work is that if you want the action, in other words, if you want someone to be an entrepreneur, or you want someone to be a lawyer or a professor or a teacher, doesn't matter what the action is. The levers that you need to improve are their attitudes about entrepreneurship, their subjective norms about entrepreneurship, their perception of behavior control. In other words, if I actually want to be an entrepreneur, I can actually do it successfully. If you increase those three, you increase the intention of someone to be an entrepreneur, which makes sense. If you increase your attitudes about entrepreneurship, if you increase subjective norms, and then you increase somebody's perception that they can be successful at it, or then they're more likely to want to be an entrepreneur and more likely to be an entrepreneur. And so what we've done, now we've done this research, and we're going to do it at your university as well. I've done it in the US at various schools. I've done it in Mexico. I've done it in Colombia, and we're doing it in France, Spain, and this coming year in Malaysia. And so we compared a theory-based class where they write a business plan and a problem-based class where they actually run a venture. And what we do is we collect data at 3 different points: at the beginning of the semester, at mid-semester, at the end of the semester. And so this is what I was observing in my class prior, when I used to teach the business plan. At the end of the semester, people came in with, at the beginning of the semester, people came in with good attitudes. Writing the business plan had their attitude about entrepreneurship go down. Subjective norms. This is, I love this question. The question is, my mother would be proud of me if I became an entrepreneur. Well, we know your mother would be proud of you regardless of whether you're an entrepreneur or not, but we know what's happening in the class is causing the drop in your perception of what society thinks about entrepreneurship. The intention, again, the intention to be an entrepreneur drops, and all of these drops are statistically significant, right? So some of them to 0.001. So it's telling you that what's happening in the class is causing this drop. And then the perception of behavioral control doesn't change. And it doesn't change because the students realize that writing a business plan is not entrepreneurship. And therefore, they still think they could be successful entrepreneurs, but their attitude to be entrepreneurship has gone down. Goes down. So they're less likely. And this is what the research shows, that the more we teach entrepreneurship, writing a business plan, doing a business model, doing a business canvas, the less likely they are to actually be an entrepreneur. And so comparing that to this problem-based class, in other words, the class where students actually take $1 or an insignificant amount of money and actually develop and start a business and run that business during the semester, we see the drop at midterm, right? Which is significant. So what happens is entrepreneurship is tough. Entrepreneurship is full of fraught and failure and uncertainty. So their attitude goes down. But as they figure it out, the attitudes rebound. Similarly with subjective norms, they go down, they go up. Intention.
John, excuse me.
Yes.
We're still on slide 47 out of 80. Is there a chance you could try to move the slides if it'll work again?
You're at this slide?
It's not showing up like before.
Can you see a slide or not?
No, it's not your regular slides with your data. It's
It
not.
says 47 out of 80, but it's not showing it.
There's no image at all?
There.
Now it just loaded the graphs. You're right, Lisa. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so there was the research I was talking about, the old class, and you can see statistical significant drops in attitude, subjective norms, and intention, and no drop in perception of behavioral control. When you superimpose that to this problem-based class, we see a statistical significant drop, a statistical significant increase in attitudes, meaning that as you figure it out, during the course, it's difficult, it's challenging, and there's a drop in all of the scores. And then as the students start figuring it out, in other words, just think of those 3 images of the student with the brownie business. They do the initial post, nobody responds to it, their attitudes go down, their intention to go entrepreneurs goes down because they're having these initial failures. And then as they start figuring it out, they start getting more successful at it, those scores all rebound, right? And so this is sort of the difference. And then these differences here, 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 at the end of the semester are statistically different. So what's interesting is that the students start out at the same level, they end at different levels. And so that is sort of the research evidence that a problem-based class is increasing the level of student intention to become an entrepreneur. We obviously can't measure we haven't measured their actual action of being entrepreneurs because we're capturing these students as freshmen in a university. So we don't expect them to quit university to start their business. But I will tell you, at the graduate level, every year, I have a student in my Harvard class, or one or two every year, that quit their job and start their business. And so you can see the power of the tool in that it is changing behavior, and people are actually starting their businesses. Is it scary? I'm just going to talk about the scariness. For faculty, it's scary. I'm not going to lie to you. And why it's scary is because you don't know what the outcome is. And why it's scary is that most of you have never been an entrepreneur. But that's okay. You don't need to be an entrepreneur to facilitate. You have doctorates and you're experts. And what you're looking to do is facilitate. You don't need to know the answer. The beauty of this class is you don't need to know the answer. And so the students construct the answer of what is successful entrepreneurship. And so Lisa's going to talk about assessing. I'm going to unshare my screen. So is my screen unshared?
We just see the J.
Yes.
This is strange, but we've unshared the screen, right?
That's correct.
Perfect. You should see me now, right?
No, we just see the J, the little round dot.
Okay. Regardless, you don't need to see me.
Yeah, we can see you now.
Oh, you can see me now?
Oh no.
I
Just now we can see you, but now no. Yeah.
Perfect. You can see me now. Okay. So so that's the research behind the utility of this methodology. The research is it's pretty powerful. Both sort of what you see the transformation in your students, and then when you look at the research and say, okay, this problem-based class is really helping students gain the knowledge, skills, and ability, the tools to become successful entrepreneurs. And then, like I said, the students leave my class. These are my undergraduate students, and I don't see them. And next thing I know, they're have started their own businesses. They have continued doing this business throughout their semester, throughout their academic undergraduate career. I haven't researched it, but I know that anecdotally that there's a lot of them starting and continuing their businesses. And May, did anyone start their business in your session when you took the class, or no?
I'm trying to think. I can't think off the top of my head.
Yeah, but there's usually people that quit their jobs. So anyway, so that's the evidence behind the utility of this approach. Yeah.
We do have some people in this year's class, or in this class this semester, that are actively selling.
Yeah, there's a number of people in this class who are like they're going to quit their job. So, so I guess you can read the research and sort of make your determination, but I'm quite confident that this methodology will lead, and the evidence shows that this methodology would lead to more students actually starting real businesses. Period. I stake my claim, my reputation on that. But I need your help to make it context appropriate, right? And so who's going to translate? We're going to translate my workbook. So everybody will have my workbook to go through, and it's applicable to modules, it's applicable to courses, it's applicable to sociology, engineering, medicine. It's not discipline specific. And so the idea is I'm going to give you the tool set. You're going to develop the tool set, and then I'm going to give you the workbook that then we can use with the students. So I'm really excited about this as we move forward with this project. Next week, Lisa's going to sort of take the lead on sort of unpacking how entrepreneurs learn to be entrepreneurs. So I've sort of given an overview of the class, and I've showed you the research that shows that it works, and I've given you the process of engaging the class. I'm going to send you the link to to the videos, I want you to watch those 2 videos. They're powerful. They're short. They're like 10 minutes long. So I really expect you all to watch them. And they're fun because these are freshman students. Yeah, they're freshmen. One's from China, one's from Nepal, but and then the other 2 are sort of Americans. Yeah. So any questions or comments? Can't wait to get over there. Right, Mame? So I'm waiting for questions or comments.
I would love to. I wanted to show you the quilt.
Oh yeah, that's a crazy quilt.
This is a quilt. It has a lot of patchwork together. It's a family thing that you do.
Yeah, and so that sort of represents, Mame was in the Air Force, and Mame is a project manager, and Mame is in Houston, and her real name is Mary Margaret, and all these other little elements of who she is, that she's able to connect, help her build a solution to a problem that's meaningful to her. And that's the critical thing. It can't be meaningful to me and not to her, because if it's not meaningful to the person, they're not going to spend the necessary time to pursue it. And your job is to help them achieve that goal. It's really powerful as a professor, as you're helping people achieve something that they want to achieve, but is daunting and are afraid and they don't know how to proceed. Yeah. And then at the end, you leave and you're like, wow, you've grown a whole lot more than I ever would have imagined. You developed your idea a whole lot better than I ever would have thought. And many times, and this is that element that you don't know the right answer. I used to think I knew the answer. And then once you get out of the way, students surprise you because there's so much, even though they don't have a lot of experiences, when they're giving agency, when they're giving ownership of the idea, they thrive. One of the earliest comments I had from students in the entrepreneurship program was, after 4 years of being in a classroom, this is our first time to actually go outside of the classroom and test their ideas. Students are taking entrepreneurship because they want to be entrepreneurs. And unfortunately, a lot of what we do isn't entrepreneurship. A lot of what we do in entrepreneurship education is not entrepreneurship. And so this is a way to pivot, to tweak, and to really incorporate entrepreneurship action into how we teach entrepreneurship. Fantastic. Hanin, do you have a question? I see your hand is up. No, you're good? Excellent. Well, any other questions? Ray, what does your child have to say? Are they good?
Yeah, good, Prof. Very clear.
Your child's asleep now, I think.
No, especially about the KSA, Prof. Yeah, it's very
about the KSA. You really like the KSA?
Yeah, KSA, but need to improve. For knowledge and some skills. Yeah.
You have to start there, because the individual has to figure out how to solve it themselves, and that focuses attention on what can that student do, not what the ideally would do, but what can that person actually do to solve the problem. And that's why you have to meet them where they are. And I don't know the profile of the students, but I've given you examples of my students who are unemployed, what we used to call secretaries, administrative assistants, and are executives of companies. And so, yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, Prof.
We will see you. I'll send you the link. I'll send the link through the chat. You guys can watch it. Watch it tomorrow. I know it's 10 p.m. now. Watch it tomorrow. It's just short. Each of them are only 10 minutes. And then reflect on what we talked about. And this is the outcome of what we talked about of a classroom. This is the end of the semester. So very good. Have a great night, everybody.
Have a great night. Thank you, Dr. John.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Lisa.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good day,
Thank you,
John.
everybody.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.